What's up, Weirdos? Tree Surgeon here, and today I've got in front of me one of Honda's last named weapons. A true two-handed claymore, the Honda Blackbird 1100, a thing of legend whose name is whispered across hallowed halls. And behind me is a 9-bedroom house, which probably looks familiar to longtime viewers of the channel. More on the house later in the video, but this motorcycle, Forgotten Angels, and that house back there all have a lot in common. This Honda Blackbird 1100 could be your named weapon for 25 bucks, but more on that later. Let's dive into the Honda Blackbird for right now. For me, the Honda Blackbird in legend, in its steez, in how cool it was and what it meant to me as a kid in the 90s, is so much more than what it is on paper. But don't get me wrong, this bike is a lot on paper. This is a 6-speed 1200cc inline 4 motorcycle from Honda that makes 170 horsepower and 100 foot-pounds of torque. That's a big number, 100 foot-pounds of torque. That's the number that really matters when you're riding it around, but not the number that really mattered for why it was so important to me when I was a kid, because when this bike came out, it blew everyone away. It was the fastest motorcycle in the world. And while many people just remember the Hayabusa as the answering shot back from Suzuki, the Honda Blackbird did it first. And for a lot of people out there, this is the OG Superbike. When this motorcycle came out in 1997, there was nothing badder on the road. It was the apex predator, just an absolute devastating right hook from Honda to every other single motorcycle manufacturer. Nothing could touch the Blackbird. The numbers that the Blackbird produces even today are staggering numbers, and especially in this world of shrinking all these motorcycles down to parallel twins and turning what used to be superbikes into punchy little run-around town bikes. Nothing wrong with that, by the way, but sometimes you just want an absolute screaming demon of a motorcycle. And the Blackbird is definitely that, but in my opinion, with so much more class than the Hayabusa ever managed. I get it. The Blackbird versus the Hayabusa is always gonna ruffle some people's feathers, and the Busa boys are always quick to say, well, you know, they beat it by a few miles an hour in the top speed, but I don't know, man. The Blackbird, for me, is undeniable. For me, one of the things that makes the Blackbird such a cool bike is that it's an absolute screaming rocket of a motorcycle, but it does it in a way that's not necessarily like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. It's more like a Mercedes SL 500. Yeah, there's screaming fast super bikes that are absolute track weapons that they just slapped tail lights on and said you can ride them on the street. And for me, those bikes have a lot in common with supercars, stuff that's touchy and twitchy and it's street legal, but not really street bikes. Then you have the kind of car that a mafia boss would drive, a big SL 500 with a body kit and about 700 horsepower, the Lincoln Mark 8, you know, what we would call a saloon, a BMW 850i, and in that same breath in the two-wheeled world, I would say the Honda Blackbird, and of course, the Suzuki Hayabusa. We can't leave that out of here. I just happen to be a little bit of a Honda fanboy is all. Honda ended up making the Blackbird till about 2005, and this particular example of Blackbird is peak Blackbird. When they first came out, they were carbureted in the 90s, but this is the fuel-injected version that came out later with all the upgrades that they got before they finally ended their life cycle. There's a lot of people out there that wish they would bring the Blackbird back. Give us something like this again. A sport touring bike with a huge emphasis on sport. Take that Fireblade motor and shove it back in a platform like this. Not everybody wants to drive around a screaming Lamborghini. Some of us want that SL 500. You could argue that the VRFR 1200 took the Blackbird's place, but I don't think that was ever a fitting replacement for this legend. If you weren't a teenager in the 90s, it's hard to explain how important, just how insanely important the speed wars were. The speed wars between the big 4 Japanese companies in the 90s divided everybody into teams. Now, call that a good thing or a bad thing. I just like bike and I like all bikes, but you had 13 and 14-year-old kids getting into heated arguments over peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the lunchrooms across America over which bike was best bike. The ZX-11, the Honda Blackbird, the Hayabusa. I remember having those imaginary battles battles over which bike was the best and which one we would ride and how fast they would go and how badass they were, just ad infinitum, with all my friends when I was a kid. It's the bikes you had posters of on your wall, the same as the V65 and the Honda Sabre, just these bikes that were legendary. Despite this was never a motorcycle that I could have actually owned during its prime, it still shaped me and what I liked and so many other kids across America. The Japanese Speed Wars were just a thing of legend, something that you almost can't believe unless you were there experiencing it. In fact, speaking of somebody else who was experiencing it, this particular Blackbird belongs to David Tyler from Forgotten Angels. This was a motorcycle that he owned for a time in the early 2000s. Unsurprisingly, because it was the baddest motorcycle in the world. As things go, he ended up having to sell it, but it was a motorcycle he never forgot about. So when this one came up for sale, owned by a 77-year-old gentleman who didn't get rid of it because it was too fast, he got rid of it because at 77 he has 10 motorcycles, and ever since he got that KTM 1290 Super Duke, he says he doesn't ride his Blackbird quite as much. But even he loved the motorcycle so much that he sold it to David with the caveat that if he ever gets rid of it, he's got to give him first right of refusal. Well, unfortunately, after only owning it for a very short time, we're gonna have to take him up and give him first right of refusal, because David is no longer gonna own this Blackbird, a bike that he just has wanted back in his life for so many years. And that's because something bigger than David and bigger than me and this channel and the ability to do something really amazing has come up, and David has chosen to take something that he cares about and he loves very much and that he's wanted for such a long time, but ultimately is just a motorcycle, and let that motorcycle do something really, really good. Of course, with the help of all you bad people doing good things out there. It's Sunday, I got a break in the rain. Let's go ahead and stop talking about this bike and start riding it, because I'm dumping buckets of sweat out here and something tells me this goes fast enough to dry it, and I'll fill you guys in on what's going on with this motorcycle, Forgotten Angels, and that house. Looks like we got a storm brewing. Well, luckily on the Blackbird, I think we can outrun any amount of wind and rain. Short of like Category 5 hurricane level winds, I think they might go above 170 miles an hour, but short of that, ain't nothing catching us on this thing. This is a bike you definitely have to be careful of. Just like those big two-door European saloons, the 500s and 650s, the SLs, the 850Is, they come wrapped in a really classy package, but underneath, they are not playing around. Still just throwing me for a loop to be even on top of this bike, because the Honda Blackbird is just such a legendary bike. When I was a kid, I never thought I'd get to ride one. It still feels incredibly surreal. It's got so much torque, it's so sedate. If you never took this thing above 8,000 RPM in any gear, you'd still be smoking almost everything on the road. It's hard to call something with 170 horsepower that set the world speed record for a motorcycle you could buy off the showroom floor for something that, with no money down and high APR interest loan, some young 20-year-old buck fresh out of boot camp with a signing bonus could in the 90s ride away on this one in his BDUs, and plenty did, man. It's hard to say like, oh, this is the sophisticated thinking man's choice when it comes to overpowered rockets, but it is. Like I said, quarter throttle, not even getting above 8,000 RPM, and you're breaking plenty of laws. 2/3 of the way through the rev range, and this thing is a monster. Maybe we're gonna be dodging raindrops on this one. Well, didn't I say that's the point of riding something that set the world speed record for motorcycles? It's the fact that you don't have to deal with the rain, you can just outrun it. Let's go ahead and exit stage left. It's the fact that you can just ride it like a normal motorcycle, that you don't have to beat it to death to get all that power out of it. Some of these older 600s, 750s, and even the older leader bikes, man, riding them around was almost like riding a two-stroke. The power band was just rubber band thin, all at the top. And this thing, even though you got a lot at the top, it had it everywhere, man. 100 foot-pounds of torque, 100 foot-pounds of torque. For an inline 4-cylinder motorcycle, even today, that is stout, baby. The pinnacle of luxury sport touring. I mean, they call it a sport touring, and yeah, it's got a center stand, which is actually really nice. And yeah, you can put luggage on it. They made Honda line bags back in the day. This one actually has hookups for bags. It's got a grab handle. Like, it doesn't have the most aggressive clip-ons in the world, but it's not really a touring bike. That emphasis is definitely on sport. Although plenty of people, especially in Europe, plenty of people tour on these motorcycles. This engine hits like a freight train, but at the end of the day, it is a Honda, and it is a liquid-cooled, fuel-injected Honda inline 4, which their reliability goes without saying, man. They will go forever, and it's only got 23,000 miles on it right now. It'll go forever in a day, and it'll get there real quick. Just something about these legendary bikes, just like if these bikes were on a map, it would just say, here be dragons. They're just something that doesn't seem like it's allowed to exist in this day and age. And yeah, you can buy faster bikes nowadays. Not a lot of them are faster, but you can get a faster motorcycle. But at the end of the day, these things just, at the time and place that they existed, they were so extra. It just doesn't seem like we have anything that is that over the top anymore. And Honda definitely doesn't go over the top anymore. And I think it's a real sad thing they don't roll that way anymore. But at least we've still got these bikes around to remind us of how badass they used to be. It's a Honda, which usually means I'm gonna put whatever the cheapest, crappiest, smelliest gas I can possibly find in it, and it'll purr like a kitten. But it's a Honda Blackbird, so I'll err on the side of premium today. And again, this is gonna be somebody else's motorcycle here in less than 48 hours. So I'll go ahead and do them the favor of playing it safe. If you couldn't guess from what I've been saying, yes, we are raffling off David's Honda Blackbird. And we're raffling it off in the next 2 days. So we tried to talk him out of it, but when you guys see what's at stake, you'll understand and what we could actually achieve and the good that we can do in the world, then I think you guys will understand why David made the decision to go ahead and raffle off what is one of his dream bikes right after he got it too, which, whatever. I'm not trying not to cry about that too much. I do feel bad for him, but it also just makes me respect the hell out of David for what he's doing for the cause and what he's willing to sacrifice. So I'm not going to cry and moan about the fact that he just got this motorcycle, one he's wanted for so long, and now he's immediately having to give it up. I'm just going to respect the man for what he's doing. If you guys aren't new here, you'll know that we are in the middle of a raffle for a Harley-Davidson Road King, with 100% of that money going directly to Forgotten Angels to help them fight against the system of abuse in the foster care system. You guys who have been to the camp out know what we do down there. We help young men and women who have aged out of the foster care system. David and Cindy help them become productive members of society. They give them their very first chance in the world. They help them build tiny homes that they can own themselves. They help them get their driver's license. They live on the property. They own something. They learn responsibility. They learn how to work on their own car. They get their motorcycle license. They get their first motorcycles and learn how to work on them. They basically become real men. And I say real men because even though the state says they're men at 18 and they get made homeless and kicked out of their foster care homes by bad acting foster care parents, they aren't men yet. They're teenagers and they haven't had nearly anything that they should have gotten from real loving parents that they would need to become productive members of society. And a lot of them are just on a beeline for homelessness and drug addiction. When they live on the property, they're held to a higher level of responsibility. They learn how to pay bills. They learn how to appreciate what they work for and what they own. And they get all the skills they need to make it in this world instead of become another statistic. In short, they learn how to go from being kids to being men. And I keep saying men because even though Forgotten Angels helps a lot of young women, there are plenty of young women who are aging out of foster care too. Plenty of teen moms with nowhere to go. What you guys have to understand is kids that are in this high risk of a situation, having a co-ed facility is just something that is absolutely not possible. You can't have at-risk, abused, and mentally unstable young men and women cohabiting. It's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for continuing this cycle and it happening again. So all the young women that Forgotten Angels help, and they help a lot, then none of them actually live on the property. They live in other places. They receive financial assistance from Forgotten Angel. They receive emotional assistance. They do receive a lot of help, and a lot of the dollars that you guys have donated over the years have gone to help them. In fact, the vast majority of people that Forgotten Angels help do not live on the property. They all live off property. Ultimately, the goal is that they don't live there on a tiny home, and they own their own home or have an apartment and become, like I said, a productive member of society. But housing young women on the property is just not something that was ever possible. It's never been possible, and because it isn't, it's also led to some incredibly tragic events, and we do have a possible solution, and that's the house. More on what has happened in the past with Cindy and Kira, and more on what the future could look like. I mean, somebody's future, no matter what else happens, somebody's future is going to involve owning owning David's Blackbird and having a hell of a motorcycle and having a hell of a time on it. But let me show you what another possible future is for hundreds of lives out there that otherwise would never have a chance in this world. Back at the house, this place will look familiar to people who watch the channel all the time. If you're new here or you haven't watched in a while, you might not realize that I've actually been living in this place for the last 6 months. That's always been a temporary situation. In fact, most of my stuff and Shaylee's stuff is still in boxes. We had to get out of our old place really quickly. That's neither here nor there. Our plan was never to stay in this house. And that's not because it's not nice. Obviously it is. It's got 9 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a swimming pool, this gigantic porch that wraps all the way around it. It's on 7.5 acres. I'd love to have this house, but that was never the plan, and it's still not the plan for me to have this house anyway. Whether I wanted it or not, or whether we wanted to do something with Forgotten Angels with it or not, was always kind of a moot point because the house wasn't for sale. Well, as of 2 days ago, that changed. This house now is for sale, and we have the opportunity to get it before it goes on the market and gets snapped up by some investors in a heartbeat, because almost all the real estate in Florida right now is getting bought up by gigantic billionaire investment firms that's just turning around and turning it into Airbnbs or renting it out to people or doing whatever anyway. So it's absolutely turned the market upside down. The fact that we can get in here before some investment group does is an amazing opportunity, and that's why David's Blackbird and this house and Forgotten Angels all have something in common. We are raffling David's Blackbird off. No matter what happens with the house, we're trying to raise enough money for the down payment right now. That's why David's raffling off his Blackbird. But no matter what happens with that or not, or whether we hit the goal that we're trying to hit, someone's still going to win the Blackbird. But if we can hit that goal, if we can take control of this property, the lives that we could change here are amazing. It's a little bit of a story what exactly we would do and why we would do it here. When I say we, I'm meaning the royal we, as in pretty much David and Cindy. They do all the work. But what Forgotten Angels would do with this property. It's going to involve me telling a story about Cindy from Forgotten Angels and a girl who was like a daughter to her. I'm not going to tell this story in super great detail because it's not my story to tell. A lot of you guys who have been to the camp out and who have met Cindy in person, you guys have heard this story before. Cindy from Forgotten Angels was mentoring and helping a young woman who had aged out of foster care like herself and was in a very bad situation named Kira Adderley. Kira Adderley over time became like a daughter to Cindy. I never got the opportunity to meet Kira, but listening to the way that Cindy spoke about her, she was an absolutely amazing human being who overcame so much to get herself ready to attack life, to be a productive member of society like we're trying to help these young men and women be. What she had to overcome to get there was immense, and that just makes it so much more special and so much more important. The event I'm speaking of happened right before Weems Motor Co. actually introduced me to Dave and Cindy and Forgotten Angels and changed my life and Shaylee's life forever. The first day I met them was a very somber day because it was still fresh in their minds. Very tragically, Kira Adderley was actually murdered by one of her own family members over a tax return check. This young woman lost her life at the hands of someone in her own family over a few $100s. I can't even begin to imagine the heartbreak Cindy and everyone else must have felt, losing somebody that they had invested their time in, losing somebody who they had watched overcome so many obstacles and set themselves up to be a productive member of society, to set themselves up for happiness in the future. And not only to lose them, but to lose them in an incredibly violent way, and to lose them over a tax return, over a few $100s. In fact, a lot of you guys who've been to the camp out, you know Tiger. Tiger's underfoot everywhere, and he's never far from Cindy. Well, That's how Cindy got Tiger. Tiger was Kira's dog. I bring up this story for a lot of different reasons. I try to share the good stories, the success stories. Junior from Forgotten Angels joining the military. Other young men buying their first houses, getting their first cars, riding their first motorcycles, and the good stuff. That's what I like to share. But for all these good stories, there is a lot of tragedy and senseless, preventable violence, death, and heartbreak that happens every single day. And while on the Forgotten Angels property, young men and their tiny homes are the focus there, Cindy has always wanted to start a home, a place where she could actually house young women and teenage mothers to break this cycle. The cycle of abuse is where it starts. The cycle of abuse is where it ends. Teenage mothers, young, vulnerable teenage women, these are part of the cycle, as are young teenage men who are vulnerable and prone to making poor decisions as well. Before Cindy experienced the tragedy with Kira, she had already wanted to do this, and this has not shaken her resolve in the slightest. It's always been something we've been working towards as we expand Forgotten Angels across the country with our friends over in Oregon. Jason from Sugar Tree Farm from Sessions Cannabis, who's helping us out there and has been one of the largest contributors of Forgotten Angels. As we continue along the mission to expand Forgotten Angels and what we do to every single state out there, because every single state needs it. On that list has always been having a home and a shelter for young at-risk teen mothers and young women who have aged out of the foster care program. As I said before, there are very obvious reasons that I shouldn't have to explain to you why this cannot be a co-ed situation. The house that I'm currently living in, the house that I'm standing in front of, the house that I'm asking you to buy a chance to win that Blackbird sitting out there and help Forgotten Angels get a hold of, this, in our vision, will be the Kira Adderley House for Young Women. A place where young women who have aged out of the foster care system, teenage mothers who are at risk, a place where they can learn how to be productive members of society, a place where they can learn how to be a mother, a place where they can stay when they're at risk, when their lives are in danger, a place that can prevent another tragedy like Kira Adderley from happening. I'm trying not to get too emotional about this. Anyway, like I said, I'm not trying not to get too emotional about this, but if you guys know me, you'll know that this is something I truly believe in. This is something that we're doing together. You know, we're bad people doing good things. We're all trying to get into the black on karma here. And this is something that I absolutely believe in because I believe in Dave and Cindy. I believe that we can make the world a better place. I didn't for a long time, but after meeting them, and after experiencing what they can do at Forgotten Angels, I will tell you that it is possible to change the world. And this is a place that could do that. I can see this vision. I can see tragedies being prevented. And I know that David and Cindy are the people to spearhead this movement. And I believe that this house can be a place that can prevent tragedies in this world. Is it going to prevent every tragedy? Are we going to save every single person out there? Absolutely not. Can we do what we can with what we have in front of us if we get together and we work together? Yes, I do believe that we can. And that's, oh God, dude, give me a fucking second. All right, just had to take, take a second there. That was ridiculous. Anyway, okay, when we're speaking of young mothers, young women who've aged out of the foster care system, when you're talking about a teenage mother, this is a mother who doesn't know how to be one. She has a kid. She is a mother. She doesn't know how to be a mother. Just like the young men on Forgotten Angels, how they get taught how to be a man, how to be responsible, how to be kind, how to fix their own car. Now, I'm not saying that young women who come here won't learn how to work on their car. I think that's a skill they should have too. But teaching a young woman how to be a mother is what breaks the cycle. Teaching her how to cook meals, how to be responsible, how to take care of her new child so we don't repeat this all over again. I do believe that the cycle can be broken. Is it going to be broken in our lifetimes? I don't know. I couldn't say that. Probably not. We could spend our whole lives fighting for this, trying as hard as we can, and maybe we'll never see the cycle broken. But can we do what we can do while we're here on this earth? I think yes. I think that together, all you guys out there, and I don't know how many people are going to end up watching this video, so I'm speaking to the hardcore. I'm speaking to you guys who tune in to every single Shade Tree Surgeon video, to every single Shay Lisi video, to every Cami Bay video here on YouTube. I'm talking to you guys that are always here, the constant viewers, the guys who show up to the campouts, the guys who will make me remember some crap I said 10 years ago and go, by the way, do you remember in 2014 you said this? Did you change your mind? I'm talking to you. I think that together together we can change the world, and we have been doing it. We're on the way, and this is another way that we can do it. The link to the raffle is going to be down below. Every single raffle ticket bought today, when this video comes out Sunday, I'm going to count the whole day, even though the video doesn't come out till 7, because it just doesn't seem right if somebody bought a raffle ticket 10 minutes before this video came out. But every single raffle ticket between today and Tuesday at 9 p.m. is going to count for the Honda Blackbird. The raffle is officially for the Harley-Davidson Road King, the teal deal. That's what the raffle will say, but I'm going to pick a ticket that got purchased between today, Sunday, and this coming Tuesday at 9 p.m. And one of you guys is going to win the Honda Blackbird, and every single dollar we raise in between now and then for the Honda, that's going to go directly to securing this property and turning it into Kira Adderley's House for Young Women. I know there's a lot of people out there who support Forgotten Angels and the mission that we do who have never even seen this place. They've never been to the property. A lot of you guys who've been to the property will recognize this property because we were able to use it to park a lot of cars and store stuff at, and obviously if you watch the videos you recognize it because I've been staying here. Now's a chance to turn this place into something amazing, something that can truly do some good in the world. And of course, you might win a Honda Blackbird. And even if you don't win a Honda, your ticket's still going to be counted for the Road King. So now if you buy a ticket, you got 2 chances to win, but the third reason still feels pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and film this last part out here in the rain that I was previously out running on the Honda Blackbird, because if I decide to turn on any more theatrics, I can just blame it on the weather. Tuesday at 9 p.m., someone's winning that motorcycle, and someone's also gonna win the Road King too. But like I always say, you can be a bad person doing good things. We are chaotic good, baby. Scum always floats to the top eventually, and I can see this. I can see this vision, and I can see a way to prevent at least some of these absolutely senseless tragedies that are occurring in this world. All of them, my reach ain't that big, and neither is anybody I know. But together, all of us, we do have the reach to prevent some of it. We can prevent some of it. And if we have the ability to prevent some of it, I think that it is a crime to not do it. As I always say, if you can't afford to buy a raffle ticket, please do not. Forgotten Angels is a place that helps people who are at risk of becoming homeless. Please don't make yourself homeless or put yourself at risk of missing a meal or put yourself or your family in any sort of danger by spending money you don't have. What you can do if you can't buy a ticket is share this. In fact, even if you do buy a ticket, I'm going to ask everybody to share this video. Share it with somebody you know, share it in the forums, share it on Facebook, let people know what we're trying to do here. I know it hurts to share it and ask more people to buy tickets because it hurts your chances to get this bike. 48 hours to buy tickets, that's it. I know it hurts to share it, and I know it's a big ask for me to ask you to share this video, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask you anyway. I appreciate all the amazing support all you people out there have given us. Immediately comes to mind. I almost don't want to say anybody because I know I'll forget people. Thinking of my man Flip and the Blue Mule, Journey of Jerry, Moto Mortician. I'm gonna stop, dude. If I keep naming people, I'm just gonna, it'll be more likely that someone's gonna get mad that I forgot to say their name. I'm just saying there's a lot of amazing people out there who have helped Forgotten Angels mission, who continue to do so, who I know are gonna buy a ticket for this. In fact, most of them already have bought a ticket for the Road King. You guys are amazing. I appreciate everybody's help, and nobody appreciates it more than Dave and Cindy. Well, I would say if anybody appreciates it more than Dave and Cindy, or at least one day they'll appreciate it when they get older and they look around them and they realize that they're living a much better life than they ever would have if they hadn't gotten the help from Forgotten Angels, is these young men and women. They're going to be the ones who appreciate it the most. One day. I'm not saying right away, because a lot of times when they come to us, they don't exactly have the best attitudes. You ever met an 18-year-old who was close to being homeless? They got an attitude about 2 feet wide, but that doesn't mean they don't deserve our help. That doesn't mean we can't step in where literally everybody else has failed them. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. That link is down below. Click on it, share it, be a bad person doing good things. Until next time, y'all, keep it weird.
Crashing through the sky comes a fearful cry. Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Armies of the night, evil taking flight. Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Panic spreading far and wide. Can the world oppose the deadliest of foes? Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Who will risk it all to end the evil call of shade? up, they never say die, walking tall with banners high.
Shade Tree Army, a ruthless gang of scum, villains, freaks, and bikers determined to rule the world.